I didn't realize how much of myself I was losing until one night when I caught my reflection in the dark window above the sink. I looked smaller, like someone trying to occupy less space in their own life. My shoulders were tight, my jaw locked, and it felt like I was watching a stranger mimic my movements. That moment hit me harder than anything my girlfriend Jenna had ever said to me, and she'd said plenty. Most days were simple. I worked at a small hardware store on the edge of town, the kind of place where regulars chatted about lawnmowers and fishing weather. I liked the routine. I liked knowing where everything was. I liked going home tired but clear-headed. And for the first few months of dating Jenna, walking into our place felt like stepping into warm light. But the warmth faded faster than I expected. It started with little comments. Things I brushed off because everyone has moods, right? You're wearing that to dinner? You didn't need to take so long at work. It's not like your job is complicated. You smell like the lumber aisle again. Can you not track that into the apartment? The first time she said that last one, she laughed after, like it was a joke. I laughed too. But it never stopped being a joke, and eventually the laugh disappeared from her side altogether. She began rearranging small parts of my life without asking. My shoes moved. My jacket relocated. The mug I always used mysteriously disappeared behind other cups. I'd find my keys in places I never put them. At first I thought I was just tired, forgetful, distracted, but the pattern got too familiar. "You're so disorganized," she'd say while I was desperately checking pockets for my wallet. "You'd lose your own head if it wasn't attached." I told myself she meant well, that she was trying to help me get my life in order. But I'd never needed that kind of help before. The worst part wasn't the comments. It was the shift in how she reacted to anything I enjoyed. I liked watching old sitcoms after work. Nothing fancy, just something that made the room feel easy. One night she stood in front of the TV and said, "Do we really have to watch this? It's so basic." She didn't wait for an answer. She just switched the channel. Next came the way she'd correct every story I told, even harmless ones. "That's not how it happened. You forgot this part. You always exaggerate." It chipped away at me in ways I didn't immediately notice. I spoke less. I made fewer choices. I tried not to annoy her. I tried to be easy. I wasn't easy. I was disappearing. There were warnings I ignored, like how she'd scroll through my messages without asking, how she'd sigh dramatically when I said I needed an hour alone after work, how every conflict somehow traced back to something I had allegedly done wrong. But the moment things genuinely shifted was on a Tuesday night. I'd worked a long shift because a shipment came in late, and all I wanted was food and silence. I walked through the door and she immediately snapped, "You said you'd be home by 6. It's 7:30. I told you the shipment. I don't care about the shipment. You don't respect my time." I stood there in my work boots covered in sawdust, starving, exhausted, and somehow apologizing for doing my job. That night she accused me of intentionally ignoring her needs, then spent 2 hours listing everything she felt I did wrong in our relationship. I didn't speak much. Every time I tried, she cut me off with, "Don't interrupt me. See? You do it again." By the end, I barely recognized my own voice when I said, "I'm sorry." She went to bed satisfied. I stayed awake at the kitchen table, staring at the turned-off TV screen like it might explain how I got here. That's when I saw my reflection in the window. Smaller, dimmer, tired in a way that didn't come from lifting boxes all day. Something inside me tightened into a single heavy thought. This isn't normal. This isn't love. And if I didn't do something soon, I'd lose myself completely. I didn't have a plan yet. But for the first time in months, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. The quiet beginning of a boundary. A quiet beginning of enough. I didn't act on it that night, but that moment was where everything started to change. The shift didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happened slowly, like someone turning down the dimmer switch in a room you didn't realize was already dark. After that night at the kitchen table, I tried to pay attention. Not react, just observe. It was the first time I'd stepped back far enough to really see the patterns Jenna had woven into our daily life. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She hummed while making coffee, kissed my cheek, and joked about how tired I looked. For a second, I wondered if I'd imagined the entire argument. but the heaviness in my chest told me otherwise. At work, I couldn't focus. The aisles felt too quiet, my thoughts too loud. I replayed things she'd said, little habits she'd developed, and the way I always felt more careful around her than around actual strangers. That wasn't normal. I knew that. And yet part of me still tried to rationalize it all. But the escalation came quickly. Jenna began tracking my time more blatantly. You left the store at 5:03 yesterday. Why wasn't I your first call? You didn't text me on your lunch break. Are you avoiding me? You're always tired. It's like you don't want to spend time with me. I tried explaining that my job could be unpredictable. Customers came in late. Inventory ran behind. There wasn't a perfect schedule. But any explanation became an argument. Then she started showing up at the hardware store. The first time she said she was in the area. But the store is on a quiet road beside a tractor repair shop and a closed-down diner. Nobody is in the area. She'd wander between aisles, watching me while pretending to look at paint samples. The guys at work would chuckle and nudge me, thinking it was cute. I forced a laugh every time. What was I supposed to say? Actually, she's keeping tabs on me like I'm a missing package? Even worse were the nights. She'd bring up past arguments like she had them archived in her mind, word for word. You said last month that you'd help more around the apartment. You promised you'd try harder not to snap at me. You never follow through. I didn't remember most of the things she claimed I'd said. When I asked for specifics, she'd say, "Oh my God, do I have to explain everything to you? Why can't you just admit when you're wrong?" It wasn't yelling. It wasn't throwing things. It was the slow erosion of my confidence, the drip, drip, drip of, "You're not enough." One night, after another fight sparked by me forgetting to buy the right brand of paper towels, I stepped outside onto the porch. The night was cool, and the air felt like something I hadn't tasted in a long time. Space, quiet, my own thoughts. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old messages from before I met her. I didn't recognize the tone of my own texts. Lighter, more relaxed, joking with friends I hadn't seen in months because she said they were a bad influence. That's when something clicked. Every part of my life outside of her had slowly been trimmed away. Not in big dramatic cuts, just little suggestions, little criticisms, little boundaries that only applied to me, not her. When I came back inside, Jenna was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. "You done sulking?" she asked. "I just needed a minute," I said. "God, you're so dramatic." The words settled like a stone in my stomach. Dramatic. All I had done was breathe. That was the breaking point. Not the word itself, but the realization that she genuinely believed it. That she saw every need I had as an inconvenience, every emotion as a flaw. She wasn't confused. She wasn't stressed. She wasn't trying and failing. She simply didn't respect me. Later that night, she fell asleep instantly. I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. My heartbeat felt too loud in my own chest. I'd spent months shrinking, bending, trying to keep the peace in a war I never started. But in that quiet moment, something inside me shifted from confusion to clarity. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the unstable one. And I sure as hell wasn't going to keep living like this. I didn't know what the plan would look like yet, but the decision, the real one, happened right there in the dark. Once I finally admitted to myself that I was done, everything got sharper. Not angrier, just clearer. I stopped explaining myself so much. I stopped trying to predict her moods. I started watching instead of reacting, and that single shift changed the entire dynamic. Jenna noticed immediately. When she made a snide comment, I didn't rush to fix my tone or apologize. I just said, "Okay," and went on with whatever I was doing. When she picked at something small, the way I folded a towel, the food I bought, the time I came home, I didn't take the bait. I let the moment hang, and each time I didn't give her the reaction she wanted, something in her tightened. That's when her behavior got sloppy. The first slip happened on a Saturday morning. She claimed she had an early appointment and left in a hurry, but she forgot her purse on the counter. She came back 10 minutes later, irritated and flustered, grabbing it without looking at me. It wasn't suspicious by itself, but it didn't fit her usual routine. Jenna loved telling me where she was going and why, as if I needed to understand her schedule down to the minute. Leaving vague, unusual. The second slip came when she started locking her phone, even inside the apartment. She'd angle the screen away from me whenever a notification popped up, then pout dramatically like I was violating her privacy just by existing nearby. I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't even hint. I just observed. The third slip was the one that confirmed everything. I came home early from work because the boss closed the store for inventory updates. Jenna didn't know. Our apartment ceiling is thin, and before I even opened the door to our unit, I heard her laughing. The kind of warm, relaxed laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. She wasn't on speakerphone. The tone was too natural, too close. When she heard my keys, everything went still. I stepped inside and she was alone on the couch. Phone on the coffee table. Expression already shifting into annoyance. "You're home early," she snapped like I'd broken a rule. "Yeah, inventory got pushed." She stood, grabbed her phone, and walked into the bedroom before I could say anything else. When she came back out, her whole mood had reset, but the damage was done. She'd never been that careless before, so I started preparing. Not revenge in the dramatic movie sense, just gathering the pieces she'd been scattering everywhere. I kept my phone on silent and recorded a few of our conversations. The ones where she twisted things I said, pressured me, or tried to guilt me for things I had no control over. Nothing staged, just real moments of how she talked to me when she thought no one else would ever hear it. I saved text messages too, the ones where she'd shift blame, contradict herself, or talk to me like I was beneath her. I didn't have an immediate plan for them, but they felt important. Proof. Not just for anyone else, mostly for me. To remind myself I wasn't imagining the toxicity. Then I started reclaiming parts of my life she'd trimmed away. I reached out to my brother and made plans to help him remodel his shed. I grabbed coffee with a friend she always called a distraction. I went for a walk after work without explaining myself, and when she demanded to know why I was late, I simply said, "I needed air." That's when she cracked. "Why are you acting weird?" she asked one night, pacing the living room like she was searching for the right angle of attack. "I'm not," I said. "I'm just living my life." "Are you trying to make me insecure?" "No," I answered calmly. "I think you're handling that part on your own." Her face went red in a way I'd never seen. She went quiet, which was rare for her. 3 minutes later, she grabbed her keys and left. To clear her head. She didn't come back for 4 hours. When she finally walked through the door, she smelled faintly like someone else's cologne. She didn't even bother hiding it. That was my final confirmation. Not the scent, but the casualness. She'd pushed and controlled and demanded for months, all while doing whatever she wanted. She thought I was too worn down to notice. She thought I'd stay small. So I finished my plan. I told her my aunt, the one who lived 30 minutes away, needed help cleaning out her garage and that I'd be spending a few nights there to help her. Jenna tried to argue, but I didn't budge. I packed my things, left calmly, and waited. 2 days later, I sent her a message asking for a time to pick up the rest of my belongings. She responded exactly how I expected, a mix of insults, denial, and blaming me for ruining the relationship. Then I sent her the short audio clip of her berating me for coming home late from work and the screenshot of the messages where she admitted she didn't feel guilty seeing other people because I made her unhappy. Her responses shifted instantly, from rage to panic to bargaining, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Jenna didn't take silence well. The first day she sent long paragraphs, emotional whiplash in text form. One message accusing me of abandoning her, the next claiming she'd been planning to leave anyway. By the second day, she switched to blaming me for everything that had gone wrong, rewriting the past like she always did. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there was nothing left worth engaging in. Instead, I focused on finishing the separation cleanly. When I returned to the apartment to grab the rest of my things, I brought my brother with me. Not to intimidate her, he's the calmest person alive, but to make sure she didn't twist the situation into some story about me storming back to start trouble. Jenna opened the door, saw him behind me, and instantly softened into a version of herself I barely recognized anymore. She hovered close, fake sweet, asking unnecessary questions. Are you really doing this? Can we talk after? Are you sure you want to throw everything away over a misunderstanding? I kept my answers short. I'm sure. I don't want to talk. I'm just here to pack. It took less than an hour. Jenna tried to follow me from room to room, but my brother gently blocked her every time. By the time I zipped the last bag, the truth had settled heavily between us. She'd lost the control she'd always assumed she had. She made one last attempt as I walked toward the door. I can explain everything, she whispered. No, I said quietly. You already did. Her eyes flicked down. She knew I meant the messages and the recordings. For a moment, I saw something almost like fear. Not of me, but of the truth finally catching up to her. She opened her mouth like she might say something genuine, but then her expression hardened and she muttered, You'll regret this. I didn't reply. I stepped out. My brother locked the door behind us, and that was it. The world outside felt wider than it had in months. The real fallout happened slowly, naturally, without me lifting a finger. A few people reached out to say they'd heard some things from Jenna. Dramatic stories, exaggerated claims, the usual. I didn't argue or defend myself. I just said, here's my side, and sent the messages or audio clips when necessary. I didn't badmouth her. I didn't add commentary. I let her own words do the explaining. That alone was enough. People who used to praise her quiet confidence suddenly saw a different picture. She lost a couple of friendships, not because I tried to ruin anything, but because manipulation doesn't look so impressive when it's exposed. The guy she'd been seeing on the side, he cut things off the moment he realized she'd been lying to him too. Meanwhile, I moved into a small spare room at my aunt's place. I helped her clean out the garage, fixed a sagging shelf, repaired her old lawn chair. Simple tasks, quiet ones. She never pried, never lectured. She just let me exist without judgment. Some nights I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, listening to cicadas and letting my shoulders finally lower from where they'd been tightened for so long. It took weeks before I could breathe without feeling like I needed to defend myself. Months before I realized I was speaking more freely, laughing more naturally, choosing things without second-guessing whether someone would criticize me for them. The biggest change was internal. I didn't feel small anymore. There wasn't a dramatic transformation, no cinematic moment where I declared some bold victory. It was more like slowly returning to myself, rediscovering simple things I'd stopped enjoying. Old sitcoms, late walks, a morning donut from the bakery down the street. Every time I felt tempted to blame myself for letting things go on so long, I reminded myself, people don't notice walls closing in when it happens 1 inch at a time. What mattered was that I finally saw it and stepped out. The last time I heard from Jenna was months later. A short message. I hope you're doing well. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. The story was over. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't anything she could point to and call unfair. It was simply this. I stopped letting her version of me define who I was. I showed the truth when it mattered, and I walked away. That was enough.